Welcome to the new episode of the Effortless English podcast. And in this episode, I will talk about pronunciation. Now, pronunciation is a big topic. It's a complicated topic, a complex topic. And we can talk about a lot of different aspects of pronunciation. There are many things to think about with pronunciation. But today, I'm going to talk about psychology, and perhaps the most important point about pronunciation, the most important key to improving your pronunciation. It's probably not what you think. There have been some interesting case studies about pronunciation. And specifically, I'm talking about adults learning English as a foreign language. So not children. We all know that children who learn English at a young age as a foreign language usually will learn very, very good pronunciation. Usually they will speak just like a native speaker. If they are moved to a country where English is spoken. So if you bring your 5-year-old child, or even 8-year-old child, or 9 or 10-year-old child, to the United States, put them in school with other American children, and they get American friends, and they play with other American children every day, they are going to learn to speak English just like every other American child. They will speak it perfectly with, no accent at all. They'll sound just like an American or Canadian, or if you move to the UK, to England, they'll have that accent. However, what we find is that when adults, people who are, let's say, 18, 19, 20, 21 years or older, when they move to an English-speaking country, such as the United States, they usually do not learn to speak with a perfect American accent. And I think most of us know about this, right? We all understand that this happens. Now, because of this, and this is true, this is the truth, children who move to another country tend to learn that language perfectly, including the pronunciation. Adults who move to another country can often learn the vocabulary and the grammar and everything else just like a native speaker, but their pronunciation usually is not perfect. It's not native. They have a strong accent, usually. So because of this, a lot of people, professors, teachers, students, believe that adults cannot learn fantastic pronunciation. They believe only children can do that. However, that is not true. Because there are many case studies, many examples of adults who indeed did learn to speak with a perfect accent. Their pronunciation sounds just like an American, for example. So, if we want to be successful, what do we do? Should we focus on people who are not successful, or should we study people who are successful? Well, obviously, we should study the people who are successful and try to do what they do. Most teachers, most programs, most people focus on the failures. Oh, most people don't learn to speak well. And then they decide it's impossible. What they should do is focus on the people who are successful, the people who do learn to speak very, very well, who learn to have a native accent. We should look at those people and see, what are they doing? What's different? Now, Dr. Stephen Krashen, who is a great language researcher, he's an academic, he is a PhD, he studies language learning, and he also does a lot of work with English as a foreign language, and he studied this topic in detail. His conclusion is quite interesting. he found that yes, adults can learn a perfect accent, perfect pronunciation. And he found that the reason they have a bigger problem is because of their culture, their identity, their connection to the American culture. So I'm going to talk about America in this, but, it's the same for Canada or the UK or Australia. It doesn't matter. I'll talk about America because that's where I am right now. So Dr. Krashen found that the key thing, it's not learning any pronunciation secrets or techniques. The key thing is more psychological. It's deeper. See, the problem is adults who are raised in their own country, they have a deep connection to that country, and their identity is connected to that country. So let's say someone comes from Japan to the United States, and they have a child. They have a 7-year-old child. That 7-year-old child will go to school in America, will have American friends, will grow up in America. And in a short time, that child will feel that they are American. They will connect strongly with the American culture, American society, because a child wants to fit in. They want to belong to their group with the other children, who are all American, right? They're going to an American school. Now, because of this, psychologically, they will do everything possible to be like the other children. And especially, they will do everything possible to sound like those other children. They don't want to sound different. They don't want to sound strange. They want to sound like all of the other American children. That's happening unconsciously. They're not directly thinking about it, but it's happening deep in their brain. It's very, very important. It's a strong, strong motivation. And because they're young, it's easier for them to weaken their connection to their home country where they were born. Kids can adapt to that very quickly. The problem with adults, it's not that they can't learn language well. They can. In fact, they can learn faster than children. But it's more of a psychological issue. See, adults, when the Japanese adult comes to America, they still think of themselves as Japanese. And most of them will always think of themselves as Japanese. They will never think of themselves as American. They will always say, I'm Japanese, I'm Japanese, I'm Japanese. They will always feel a stronger connection to the Japanese culture than to the American culture. Many, maybe even most adults from another country find people from their own country to talk to connect with. So that Japanese person will come to America, and often they will look for other Japanese people who are also living in America to be friends with, to connect with, to talk with. They will tend to visit and watch and read Japanese websites. They want to keep that connection, right? Because they're adults, so their whole childhood, for most of their life, all this time, they have this very strong identity as being Japanese. It's very hard for them, psychologically, to connect with the American culture, right? They have strong ideas of how to behave, right? They're supposed to behave like a Japanese person. Well, in America, it's very different. So all of these psychological things, that's what prevents them from learning perfect American pronunciation. Here's what happens. See, they start learning English. They learn to speak English quite well. But when they speak English, they still have that Japanese accent. Now, why don't they just copy the American accent? I mean, intellectually, it's possible. They can do it. It is possible for them to do it. But most do not. And most of them will not do it because it sounds strange to them. It feels wrong to speak with the American accent, to talk more like an American. See, they could exaggerate their pronunciation if they wanted to. They could try to sound like an American more. But they don't do it because they feel embarrassed. They feel strange. That's not how they are. That's their belief. So instead, they will continue to speak with that Japanese accent. They don't want to sound strange or weird. They don't want to feel strange or weird. It's a psychological issue, an emotional issue. The child doesn't care. The child wants to sound exactly like those other children. The child wants to connect with that group, needs to. And they don't care so much about being Japanese anymore because they're not living in Japan anymore. Their whole Japanese life is gone. Now they're in America. They want that. They need to connect with those kids, so they will try their hardest to sound like the other children.